Hello, I'm Kenneth A. Kinsley, and this is Finding the Words, the only podcast devoted to text-based art and artists. Social media frequently, and often rightfully, takes a lot of heat for its negative effects on society, affecting everything from people's mental health and sleep to the spread of misinformation. But there are a lot of benefits, especially in the world of art. Instagram is a rare opportunity to discover artists from all over the world, which is how I became aware of today's guest, Chad Etting. It can also provide a sense of connection, which Chad found especially true during the pandemic. And despite his ties to the technology, his work exudes a very natural, personal looseness. Words and phrases that lean on his New England roots combine with relatable figurative elements that hint at a personal history. We touch on all this, plus how the pandemic, an old monastery, his curatorial work, thrift stores, and more have shaped his practice. Here's my discussion with Chad Etting. So Chad, nice to talk with you. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, thanks for having me, Ken.
You're part of a group show right now, Praxis, Painting for Fuck's Sake, at 1120 in Easton, Pennsylvania. I've been following you for a while now on Instagram and looking at some stuff. I see your career has a really interesting beginning. After you got your bachelor's in fine art from Stonehill College, you started teaching math in New York City for a while and living in an old monastery. How'd that come about?
Yes, just sheer luck. There was an email to the listserv at Stonehill College saying job opportunity, any major could apply. So being an art major, that kind of stuck out to me. And when I interviewed at the school, they kind of gave me a choice between fifth and sixth grade math or seventh and eighth grade English teacher, and I chose fifth and sixth grade math.
And what was that like? What was that experience like?
Oh, it was amazing. The monastery was in the East Village. It was huge. I lived with about 10 other teachers. I was there for about 2 years doing this program. Every day I'd ride the 6 train up to the Bronx. And yeah, that was just very formative experience for me in many ways, living in the city.
Mm-hmm. And so you had, it sounds like it was just a big, like a lot of empty space in the building. So you
Yeah,
had,
sorry to interrupt, but
no, go
yeah,
for it. Yeah, you had a lot
one
of
key point
studio.
that's really interesting about this was that the year before I had gotten there, one of the volunteer teachers that lived in the old monastery wrote a letter to Oprah asking for like funding to redo one of our rooms, and like Oprah obliged, and
No way.
our common room looked like out of the real world. If you think back to like that show.
That completely shifts my mental image of you living in a monastery now,
Yeah,
because
the rest of the place looked like that. I mean, I used the old chapel in like slash the sacristy, which is like the behind the scenes priest area, as like a
oh
studio
wow.
at one point. And yeah,
Oh wow.
there's a lot of space.
Yeah. Did that kind of experience leak into your work, like having that sort of surrounding?
Um, I don't know. I guess there's always the spiritual side to painting. I don't think that's new for anyone. So that yeah, I guess just being in tune with that and being aware of
Yeah.
the surroundings kind of. No direct influence though, but I always see that there's the spiritual comes through in creating.
Hmm. And once the pandemic hit, I saw that you've said, that's when you really decided to double down on painting,
Mhm.
and you were trying to make, or I guess you did for a good chunk of the time, a painting a day.
Yeah, that's what I aimed for, and that's kind of what I was doing for a while. There was much more time at home, and I was lucky to have a studio in my basement. I still do, and yeah, a few other things kind of led to that. It was Instagram, just sort of like the algorithm favors you if you're like posting something
Hmm.
today. So I kind of wanted something for that. And then I was working on I don't know if it's a regional store, Michael's. It's like a chain, but you could get like value packs of canvases there. And so using that, and then I started using house paint. So like all these things sort of from Home Depot, and which is like fast drying, and just all these different things kind of came together during the pandemic that allowed me to paint on one canvas a day. So the value packs, not being cost prohibitive, and yeah, the paint from Home Depot kind of dried quick.
Oh yeah, sure. And how much of that, part of your experience has kind of carried over to now and kind of informed
Um,
your current practice?
I think we're kind of post-pandemic now, so I'm not as home as I used to be. I'm back to being in the office 5 days a week, and then coming home and trying, fitting in my painting in the evenings, mornings, and definitely on the weekends. Um, so I definitely, for those people who follow me on Instagram, I definitely post once a day, but the paintings aren't coming out as rapidly as they did. So
Mhm.
I'm probably say like 2 to 3 per week now.
That's still a pretty good clip. I mean,
Yeah, but
yeah.
it kind of lends itself to just how I like to make a painting in one sitting. So it's usually like 20 minutes to 90 minutes that I'm working on a painting. Just and I always say that I'm trying to fall in love with the painting as soon as possible while I'm making it. So I like any reason to love the painting is sort of my indication of when I should stop and step back and maybe be done.
So you're saying it's just once, like as little as 20 minutes, just get in from start to finish.
From start to finish. But there, I mean, there's a whole. I think it's Matisse who said, like that painting took me a day or something like that, but it was really 60 years of experience that led to it.
Hmm.
But the years are kind of piling up as to when I've been interested in art, and I've painted since I was 16. So it's kind of I
Hmm.
don't know how to get where I'm going sometimes.
How did you get first? I mean, you said you've been doing it since you're 16, or painting since you were
Mhm.
16.
Yeah.
What spurred that on when you were younger?
Oh, I just always wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Just the magic of it, like to whether you're creating something like representational, so it's sort of like it's a flat surface, but you're kind of fooling the eye into thinking something's there, and then just the inherent meaning making that's involved, and I think that's a little bit more present in the text-based work, or a little more relevant with the text-based work.
Hmm.
Is you get to play with ideas, play with meanings, bend cliches, like just do some fun stuff. A lot of freedom there.
How did you start adding text to the work? Because it sounds like when you were 16, it was pretty much representational.
So I was kind of painting like everybody else was, and the text based work came out early pandemic, like late even maybe even predates that by a couple months, but late 2019, early 2020. I was just painting, and I was just like, I got to figure this out. I've got to like get whatever's inside of me out, and it wasn't like a decision like, okay, now I'm going to do text-based paintings. It just sort of happened where I wrote, the first one said landscape painting. Like I literally wrote the words landscape painting. And it just resonated with me. I don't know where it came from, nor did I know all of the different ways that could be looked at and viewed upon as a painting. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I started posting things online, and I think more people were spending time online. So I got direct feedback where those, the I sold, I think, four of those paintings. Those were like the first paintings that I sold that said landscape painting, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, well, what else? What else could I write here? Like, what else could I do?
So you do still do a lot of figurative. There are still a lot of figurative elements in your work,
Mhm.
and then there are some that are just figurative. You have a lot of the newer stuff I've noticed has like it's
Mhm.
like it looks like a fashion catalog of some sort. Like
That's kind of because
where,
it is.
yeah, I was gonna say it's like LL. Yeah, where are you sourcing that from?
So just to talk a little bit about the tech space at first. So
Sure, sure.
being so prolific, around fall of 23, so about a year ago, I've been doing almost primarily text-based paintings,
Hmm.
intuitively kind of sort of free association coming up with the words, and like certain patterns started to emerge over that 2 to 3 years that I was doing it. And by last year, I was just getting so tired of like my own patterns and just what I was
Mm.
coming out with. And so I was like, okay. And there's a little bit of like a, maybe the term is like de-skillification or something that gets thrown around with how I do some of the text-based stuff. So I was like, all right, well, what's going to challenge me to like paint something to get better as a painter, and I'm doing air quotes there. And
Yeah.
so I decided to paint a figure. And because I have my phone with me. I'm like, all right, I need a reference image. And I had just done that show at Drake's, which is a clothing store in New York. And so I was just had tapped into whatever vein online through that of just these menswear ads that kept coming onto my phone, trying to sell me
Hmm.
menswear. And so that's what I just happened upon. And I, I painted it, I enjoyed it. And again, I just sort of put everything out on Instagram because I love getting the feedback from
Hmm.
the likes. And it just, they kind of did well. In the first few, I was just like, well, I'll just be bad at this for a while. But it only took a few. And then I was like, all the confidence from painting text for like 2 or 3 years really transferred over into painting the figure.
And when on the figurative on those fashion kind of figurative pieces, you
Mhm.
crop them in at the shoulder so they don't have heads.
Right.
Is
Mainly because it started because that's how some of those photos are. They base their compositions without the heads. And I think just
Oh,
after, because it's, they're selling clothes, so the face doesn't need to be there to
sure.
show the clothing. And I think it registers a certain way when you're doing a painting to not have the face in, and it kind of depersonalizes the subject matter. But for the viewer, it becomes more familiar because you're not saying this is a specific individual that you don't know in this painting. It's like, oh, that could be my cousin, my uncle, my brother. Like it could be anyone to the viewer when they're looking at that. So it kind of opens opens up the resonance for the viewer.
Mhm. And on some of those, you still put the text over the top of the image. How do you decide which ones get text and what the text is going to be?
Well, the text is always just kind of free association, whatever comes to mind at the time. And the decision is usually made like, oh, this really needs some text if the painting's just not working on its own. So I rescue it, and it just sort of knowing that the text
Mm.
works for me and how I apply it. I could usually come up with a way to save the painting by just putting a certain bit of text in a specific color on the painting.
And color really seems to be a big thing with whether it's just a straight text-based piece with, red lettering on a say yellow background or whatever it is or the colors you're putting into. I'm sure the colors in the figurative pieces are just coming from the
Yeah, I'm
photography.
not with the photographic reference. I'm not really as true to the
Hmm.
photograph. I mean, it's like I kind of like attempt to make it look like the photograph as best to my ability, and then I kind of at some point during the painting session I abandon that and just try to make a good painting.
Mhm.
So the colors aren't always true to the ads, but color. I love color. That's like I say I love painting, but it's really kind of, they're both related. Painting and color are just two beautiful things. And when it's a monochromatic background, I always try to kind of make it a little dirty or make it a little bit of like some kind of contrast or yeah, just more interesting with a couple different tones within the monochrome. But when there's the monochrome, I always see it as either this like duality between absolute surface and absolute space, and kind of I perceive it as both. So that's that always keeps me coming back to that
I
the
like that.
monochrome backgrounds, whether it's on a figurative painting or whether it's on a text based painting.
And all of these seem to kind of be steeped in some sort of personal history, or then the New England region is a
Mhm.
major theme
Yeah.
throughout. Whether it's your memories, your personal history. Like there were a couple. I was looking through your Instagram, and you had a
Mhm.
couple that were right next to each other. One that just said, "Enjoying a Sprite in Nantucket,"
Mhm.
with some little lines around it, and then there was another one where it was just no text, a painting of a Volvo. It's a Volvo, I believe, like a
It
station
is.
wagon.
It is, yeah.
But and it almost like I start making a story having those two
Yeah.
things next to each other. Like when you were a kid, was this the Volvo you went to Nantucket in and had a Sprite? And like that was the weird memory you have from that one trip to Nantucket.
Yeah.
Like
No,
how specific are these memories?
some are pretty specific, like, like, I don't know if I've had a Sprite in Nantucket. I've had Sprite, I've been to Nantucket, but I don't know if I did the Sprite in Nantucket. And then the Volvo, I think it's just sort of, I don't know, it kind of comes to the topic of cliche that I like to play with, and some of these are a little bit of like New England cliches of like how people might think of New England, but it's also like, I don't know. I think those Volvos are cool. So it kind of just comes down to that vintage Volvo is why I chose it. But it also kind of plays into the same era of the menswear paintings that I would, or ads or pictures I would choose to make paintings from. It's just sort of that bit of I think there's nostalgia kind of everywhere these days. I think we might be moving out of it pretty soon, but for the past few years at least, I think we've been steeped in like a nostalgia for '90s.
And are how autobiographical is some of this? Like, is
Okay,
it like straight autobiographical, or is
a
it
little bit.
just
Like there's a text painting that I had in a group show at Marathon Gallery in Ellenville, New York. I think it was in '23. It said "Lonely in Alphabet City" in 2007. So
Mhm.
that's kind of a reference to like living in the East Village in the monastery, right in Alphabet City, and just being 20 something, I was feeling lonely. So that was definitely me conjuring something from the past in that one. And currently in the Praxis show in Easton with Joseph O'Neill, one of the paintings says "Reading Kerouac in Barnes and Noble," and that is definitely something I did in my younger years. Would go to the Barnes and Noble in the local area and just read some good books.
Back when we could still do such things. You were also recently in another group show at Craven Contemporary, and you showed alongside Alex Katz.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, and now, I mean, was there an opening? Did you get to chat?
No, there was an opening. I wasn't able to make it. I don't believe Alex. I wasn't told that Alex Katz was there.
Oh,
There were some prints. I think there were prints of his from a few years ago. So it wasn't current work that was in the show. But yeah,
mhm.
we were both our work was in the same show. I could say
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You got to be on the same wall,
that. Mhm.
and I see a lot of you're kind of in conversation in a lot of these works. You're it seems to me, maybe I'm reading into it wrong, but are your influences like I see a little bit of Alex Katz in some of the more figurative pieces.
Yeah, I definitely like Alex's work. I don't. I like a lot of different painters like Alice Neal when it comes to
Mhm.
that stuff. So when I'm doing,
That was one of the next people I was going to say because you do
yeah,
have a painting that just says Alice Neal right
yeah. So
across the figure.
her work is on my mind, but I don't think I'm there. I like a lot of artists that came out of the 20th century that, yeah, but not to an obsessive point. Like I think I just like Morandi is another artist that
Mm.
I like that I would love to channel a little bit of what he's got going on too. And there's a lot of great painters out there that I like. I always kind of think of whenever I see something that I like, I just kind of keep it in my mind so that when I am painting and working intuitively, I kind of am always like referencing this like visual library that I've like come up with in my mind, and I'm like, oh, did I hit a note by accident that resonates with one of these the work that some of these other artists did, and if so, I kind of follow that path and see where it goes.
Mhm. There was one that I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it was kind of funny thinking about your influences, and I was going through Instagram, and there's one where you do a Dodge logo that has like a couple of stripes above the logo, and I was wondering, like a Rothko, kind of a cheeky Rothko reference,
Yeah, there's a
or
little
was
bit
it
of
just
Rothko
accidental?
there. That was, yeah, that was a little bit more of maybe in my dirty monochromes playing up with different colors that kind of separated a little bit and became, yeah, I definitely see the Rothko reference. Um, a hint at it, but not a direct blatant reference, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah. Now, back in January 21, you started up Tourist Gallery
Mhm.
in White River Junction, New Hampshire, right?
White River Junction, Vermont. It existed there
Vermont,
for a
Vermont.
year, and then it moved. I found another space in Hanover, New Hampshire, that it existed for.
There we go. I knew there was a New Hampshire tie-in there,
Yeah.
but that you had quite a few artists. You exhibited there as well. Anna Fusco, Corey Prescia, Nicholas Vacciano, a whole bunch more.
Mhm.
Um, how did that come about?
That project grew out of doing pop-up shows of my own work. So I did back in October of 2018, I believe. I did a pop-up show. I kind of rented a space for a weekend, put up some work, and exhibited, some of my paintings at the time, and just really enjoyed the process. But it's hard to like repeat doing a pop-up show of your own work all the time. So I was like, let's spread the love. Let's see who else we could get showing here. And it was a great experience to curate and have artists that you really admire and enjoy their work on the wall and create a program over the years that, yeah, it just kind of defines my aesthetic as a curator.
Mhm. And it wasn't necessarily you weren't a gallerist per se. It was a curatorial project. Am I right?
Um, I think how I describe it changes as time goes by. Like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, that was an
Yeah.
artist-run space and it was a curatorial project. But at the time, I was like, no, I'm a gallery. This is I'm a gallerist. You could, I might have even referred to myself as
Did
the
you consider it
director.
a temporary project? Because it is no long at the
No,
moment. It's not.
it stopped. I think it was April of 23 was our last show of Matt Siegel.
Mhm. And was it intended to be temporary, or are you just gonna like ride it out as long as it would
It
take?
went way longer than I expected.
Oh,
I thought I was going to do 1 to 2 shows and then like kind of close up shop. I think at the end there was 14 shows.
wow,
Yeah, so
that's a good run.
it was great.
Do you foresee it making a return at all, or was that was
Um,
fun?
it might happen again. Right now, I'm kind of having fun and focused on my own work and showing my own work. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I always get the itch to curate again. But it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and I learned that from it.
How did that experience as a gallerist slash curator kind of inform what you do now? Did it change the way you approach painting?
I think I really respect the work that galleries and curators do. I think I always did, but I think I just have an insider's view of it now, and just really am appreciative for any opportunity I get to show my work and really appreciate just the work that goes into putting on a show. It's not easy.
And you mentioned Drake's earlier, and something that you said in an interview on their site around your show, you said that you see your work as having a parallel with music, like the background of the piece is the music, and the lyrics go on top. Which do you feel comes first, the music or the lyrics?
Well, I think that was kind of a really direct statement. more about, I was kind of doing just text-based work at the time, so I always felt like the background was, whether it was a little abstract or monochromatic, that was like the music part to me, like the abstract qualities of just sound that people put music to, and then just direct reference like the words or the lyrics, like so that's kind of what I meant by that. But it's always it's very rare that the words aren't finishing the piece for me. I don't really start, if I start with some text, it likely gets painted over, and it's sort of the cherry on top of the sundae is when the words go on.
Do you ever start with the words in mind and just wait to put them on, or is it
I have,
like you
and
finish?
it's usually
Yeah.
unsuccessful. It's a little bit too thought out. I kind of like to stay a little bit more in the feeling sense when I'm approaching work, to stay intuitive. I think when my head
Mhm.
gets involved and thought gets involved too much, it just kind of grinds up the gears. It just doesn't work.
Because you definitely like to mix things up. Because I'm looking at your work and I see, like we said, just monochromatic with text, just figurative with text. Some of them that I thought, wow, he's really changed his style with the painting here. And then I realized, oh, these are like paintings from thrift shops
Yeah,
with the words on top of them.
yeah,
Like is it just the adventure of just mixing it up? Even though you've got all these different things going on, it's still definitely yours.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Is that where the fun comes in?
I love I love going to thrift shops and secondhand stores that have art in them, and they usually do. They always have this like bin to sort through, where they have just kind of random ones on the walls. I have a really beautiful one that I got at a store for $10, and it is such a gorgeous painting. It's just alive. The energy in it is amazing, and it helped me learn like the power of what a painting can do. This painting I got for $10 at a thrift store, but not all of them are that, like
Oh,
home
yeah,
runs.
and
But like some I
and
get,
that's kind of the beauty
I'm
of
like,
them too,
oh
is that they are, yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. And but I also get some, and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like a blank canvas inherently has meaning to it. So these thrift store paintings that someone made to varying degrees of expertise, but it just sort of is this that ended up in a Goodwill or in uh, you know one of these secondhand thrift stores, and so I feel like, yeah, it's appropriating in a way, like kind of taking somebody else's work and adding things to it, but I don't know. I feel like when it finds itself, when the painting finds itself in a space like that, it's up for grabs, and I can revitalize it and give it a new life. Either just painting my name on it, or painting a word on it, or something, and I think it becomes my work.
Oh, definitely. And you did say in the going back in and looking at stuff here, you said something in a Substack for art stuff, that your guiding principle behind both your painting and finding the space that became tourist was, if something feels good and looks right, then it usually is. So what is it that ends up feeling good to you and looking right to you?
I don't know. I feel like that's a moving target. That's what I'm always searching for. Is like, what is it? But that's just kind of points to the intuitive nature of how I approach most things, especially uh, aesthetic art related things. It's Yeah, just I go with my gut.
And what's coming up on the horizon? What do you have coming up after the group show with Praxis?
Another. This is a little. I just it's loosely based, but 2025, another group show with Craven Contemporary, and then Marathon Gallery that I mentioned a little previously in the podcast about doing a group show with them. That was back in 23, but there might be something on the horizon with them in 2025 as well.
Excellent. Well, Chad, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This was cool. Thank you, Ken.
And that's it for today's episode. Thank you to Chad for coming in and chatting. Thank you to all of you for listening. There are a lot of interviews coming up soon, so please hit subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you so much.